Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about fibers. Now in class we talked about various types of groups of polysaccharides. We talked about starches, we talked about glycogen, and fibers is another one of those polysaccharides. Now if you recall, what makes fibers unique is they have a very unique kind of chemical structure. They're very complex. They're saccharides, and so because of that they're largely difficult to break down in the small intestine to digest. Not impossible, a little more difficult. Now, that's actually a good thing, and we'll talk about why that's important and how soluble and insoluble fiber are different. So we're talking about fibers. We're really talking about these two categories, soluble and insoluble fibers. Regardless, you want to have about 24 grams at least of fiber in your diet per day. Most people don't get that much, so it is quite important to have in your diet. And we're going to see fibers in a number of different foods, grains, legumes in particular, pinto beans, lima beans, things like that. We also see them in the skins or outsides of various fruits and vegetables. And so, again, a lot of common foods that we consume. So what's the difference between soluble and insoluble fiber? Well, let's start with they're both important. Right? Soluble fiber makes up kind of like a gel-like substance in the small intestine. It dissolves in water. And what's really key with soluble fibers, there's very good evidence that diets high in this help to maintain a normal blood glucose, limits LDL cholesterol. We'll talk about what that is in a couple weeks in class. And can be really important in lowering overall cholesterol. And so soluble fiber nutritionally, even to reduce heart disease, can play a really, really key role. Now, insoluble fiber are a little bit different. We generally do not break down insoluble fiber well in the small intestine, if at all. However, in the colon and large intestine, we have bacteria that will ferment fibers, so we can break them down to some degree. So insoluble fiber, again, doesn't dissolve in water. Helps, though, to improve motility and add bulk and keep pH normal in the colon. Because of this, water is going to enter into the stool, which is good as well. And really getting more and more good data that seems to show that diets higher in insoluble fiber may even limit some types of colon cancer. And so both are really important. And if we're being honest, most fiber high content foods that I mentioned before actually have both. Now, some definitely have more types than others. Wheat bran is a good example. Wheat bran generally is mostly soluble fiber, but does have a little bit insoluble fiber. Other foods like kale, pinto beans, things like that have a little more insoluble fiber than soluble fiber. Again, you don't have to memorize these numbers. This is just to give you an idea of fiber content of some of these foods. Now, there are also fibers that we sometimes add to foods. We call these functional fibers or added fibers. There's lots of examples of these, and you often see them in the ingredients of your food item. Guar gum, xanthan gum, pectin, cellulose, some polydextrose is another, where we add these fibers intentionally to foods. Sometimes as a sweetener, sometimes to add texture or certain feel to the food. That's important, whether it's in a baked good or something that needs to have more of a shelf life. Now, we wouldn't really consider these nutritious per se, and in fact, a lot of these, to be honest, are actually natural. Guar gum actually comes from a guar plant. So these aren't necessarily artificial as you may think of those, but it is sort of another group of fibers that potentially is important in foods that we consume. Okay, so that's fibers. In the next video we'll look at another aspect of carbohydrates.